Shalom, Israel, Shalom. Brother Ezekiel out of W5 Detroit Camp coming to you with another video. Before I start this video, I want to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Mashiach Malak Yahushai. Yahweh being the name of the Heavenly Father, who the world calls God. Yahushai being the name of his only begotten Son, who is the King and Savior of the nation of Israel, who the world inwardly calls Jesus Christ. Shalom to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, reading, praying, fasting, magnifying their body as a living sacrifice, and doing everything they can to magnify the ministry of the Lord in these last days. Shalom unto you, right? I believe I titled this video, The Importance of Joining a Hebrew Israelite Camp, right? It's one of the most controversial topics, in, I would say, the community right now, and even to those that are on the outside looking in. What I mean by that is, there's people that you have Christians, those of our people, whether it's so-called Black, Hispanic, etc., they're looking at us, whether they, come from a Christian background, Muslim background, 5%er, so-called, Black. I want to word this correctly. They're activists necessarily, and they look at us. Okay, who are the Hebrew Israelites? Who are these guys? What are they talking about? Why should I really join them? You got different brothers from different camps doing different ministries and different jobs across the four corners of the earth and over here in the West as well. And, of course, this video is not to necessarily advocate for anyone in particular to just join WFI, because the Spirit of the Lord is going to lead you to where, you're meant to go, right, essentially. But also at the end of the day, the point of this video is to show you what a camp is, right? And I wrote down some precepts through the Spirit. I'm going to gather them, and Most High willing, it's maybe edifying. Right. First off, the camp is essentially, a nation, right? The nation of Israel. As a matter of fact, let's grab that. Right. I'm gonna share my screen, because that's essentially what a camp is. Sometimes people look at us from the outside in, they're not really, sure what a camp is. Just a bunch of guys just out there yelling. They're zealous. What are these dudes talking about? Essentially, I don't really understand this. They're a hate group. They just hate white people. White people are just bowing down. Who are these guys? Why should I join them? Why should I take them serious? Right? Because essentially, that's what the, mainstream regular person on the outside looking in is thinking in their mind. Right? Now, there's some of us who kind of looked at Hebrew Israelites and we understood the zeal. We understood the passion. We understood the love for our God and for our people. Some of us, we didn't really get as, emotional as, others. Nevertheless, essentially, what you're building right now, especially you brothers on the highways and byways, is a nation from the ground up, and they've done so for years, right? Let's grab that, and let's show what a camp really is. It's the book of Numbers, chapter 10, and start at verse 1. I'm going to start at verse 1. And it said, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, make thee 2 trumpets of silver, of a whole piece, and thou shalt make them, and thou shalt that thou mayest use them for the calling of the assembly and for the journeying of the camps. So what is that going into? The camps is talking about the nation of Israel, right? The 12 tribes. That's essentially what a camp is. A camp is really a nation, an army, a church, and essentially, especially nowadays, a rehabilitation center for our people, right? And I want to grab the different precepts and how that's going into that, right? But I wanted to bring this out in regards to the nation of Israel has always been a camp, right? It's not necessarily a new thing. You see this within the law, right? I want to grab this, because next you talking about the army of the Lord, right? A lot of people are not really familiar with that. They just kind of get confounded. What do you mean by army? Israel was an army, because a lot of people, once again, see the Bible from a Christianity point of view. Let's go down and read about the Lord's camp. And obviously it's a future prophecy. You can read this mighty exquisite chapter on your own in regards to the men in these last days being raised up and Most High willing being elected to do this purpose. So it's the book of Joel, chapter 2 and verse 7. This is going into a camp, and into the camp being what? An army, the army of the Lord. Just like it tells you in Ezekiel 37 chapter, in the 10th verse, that they shall stand upon their feet, an exceeding great army, in regards to the dead bones in that prophecy. Right? What's the book of, and that's talking about what? The nation of Israel. Right? And this is what they're going to do when they rise up, right? On another future. It's the book of Joel 2 and 7. It says, they shall run like mighty men. They shall climb upon the wall like men of war. and they shall march every one of his ways, and they shall not break ranks. Meaning, there's going to be order in the Lord's camp. In the Lord's camp, it's going to be order in the Lord's army, right? A lot of so-called that's one of the most allergic things to a so-called black man, so-called Hispanic man right now is order, because they feel like that they're entitled to do what they want, say how they want, feel how they feel, and kind of just, well, I mean, is it really off? Is it really a sin? Well, I mean, am I really putting stain to the ministry? A lot of men don't really think like that sometimes, as well as women. But nevertheless, at the point is, when the Most High brings forth Yasha Allah back into our full prominence and power, this is the type of spirit we're going to be moving in. This book of verse 8, Salaki. Neither shall one thrust one another, they shall walk every one his path. And when they shall fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. That's the type of power we're going to have. We're not going to be able to get hurt. Nobody's going to be able to harm us, do anything to us like they did to our forefathers, like they still do to us today, and like they do to our ancient forefathers in the scriptures, right? Of course, the first, when I mentioned the first forefathers, I was talking about slavery, Shalaki. But verse 9 says, they shall run to and fro in the city, they shall run upon the wall, they shall climb up upon the houses, they shall enter in and at the windows like a thief. I mean, that's the type of, imagine how much fear you're going to see a so-called black man moving like this. You can't harm him. You can't put him down. You can't just take him and do whatever you want to him. You can't just kind of flip him out. You can't just kind of overcome him with, grab the AK, grab the strap, just overcome like we always do, chase him down. No, this is the spirit of Yahweh Shem El Shah that's going to be flowing through our veins, right? When we get our perfect bodies. Right, I'm going to jump down to verse 11. It's the point. And Yahweh shall utter his voice before his army. And this is talking about what? The Lord's camp. For his camp is very great, but he is strong that executed his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can abide in it? Right? And that just goes to show that what? Of course, on another level, the camp, Hebrew Israelite camp is what? Of course, the nation of Israel and also the army of the Lord. Right? The next one I want to go into is the church. Because a lot of people get confounded when they say, well, when we're out there, they ask us questions. They say, well, this is our church. This is our congregation. Some people kind of get confounded. Oh, you guys are just a group, a hate group. And, all of these, or extremists, all of these, quintessential labels that they just kind of throw upon us. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, that's essentially what we are. We're a church, right? We're a gathering together. Matter of fact, let's grab that Ezekiel chapter 11. And this is essentially prophecy, right? You can't just kind of ignore that. And that's one thing, a lot of religions, especially the so-called Christian church, which a lot of our people is in, they don't know the spirit of prophecy. They have no idea. They don't even know why a lot of hell is breaking loose on the earth right now on the deeper level, nevertheless. But it's Ezekiel 11:16. It says, therefore say, thus saith the Lord God, although I have cast them off far among the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come. So a little sanctuary, a little church, that's who we are in the last days. That's why you should join the Hebrew Israelite camp, right? Because at the end of the day, when you first come into this knowledge, this beautiful knowledge that Yahweh Shem Yahushua has bestowed upon you, right, as a man, as a woman, as well as the children, that they may grow as well, guess what? You need somebody to guide you. You need a shepherd. You need a teacher, right? Because like it tells you in Acts, right? Actually, I didn't have this down, but we're going to grab it, for edification's sake. So Acts chapter 8, I'm going to start at verse 29. It says, and then the Spirit said unto Philip, go near and join thyself to this chariot. And Philip ran. And obviously, he's talking about, the Ethiopian eunuch in context, right? I just want to grab the point. Go grab thyself and join thyself to this chariot. And Philip ran thither to him and heard him. Readest the prophet Isaiah and said, understandest thou what thou readest? Right? And this is the point, verse 31. So Philip is asking, you know what you're doing? You know what you're reading? You understand this prophecy? You understand this breakdown? That's why it's important to understand, or it's like it's important to join the Hebrew Israelites, right? It's important to join a camp. It's important to join a so-called spiritual nest, right? And I wanted to grab an example of an animal's nest to make a concise point on why I say that, right? But it's reading on the point, verse 31. It says, and he said, how can I, except some man should guide me? And he desired Philip that he would come up and sit with him. So the point was, he said, how can I understand Isaiah except some man should guide me. Meaning some man should teach me the prophecies, teach me the milk, teach me the meat, the wine, the bread, right? The oil, all of these things. And so I get a sufficient diet, good enough for my spirit to grow thereby, right? That's the point of joining a Hebrew Israelite camp. That's the point of joining brothers and having a brotherhood. That's the point of having a sisterhood as well, because you have to understand how to maneuver within this world. It's extremely difficult when you come into this truth and you have nobody. Just to give a quick testimony on my part, when I first came into the truth, I was a Hebrew Israelite, and I understood that. But then I was also an individualite because of, my living situation at the time, what I was doing. And of course, I didn't know, anything about the camps until, I continued to grow later on. And, the Most High showed me. But nevertheless, I was an individualite for about, I want to say, for the better half of about 2 years and some change. And I wish I could have been instructed better. I wish I could have been taught better, not necessarily just in doctrine, but also certain character traits that I needed to grow in and excel in, right? And how do you do so? By having certain people around you to, kind of emulate, but not in a negative or wicked spirit, but in a righteous, positive spirit, to understand that's the discipline you should have. That's the discipline you should move in, right? That's the type of spirit you need to kind of, look towards, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said, some men have 30, 60, 90 or 100 fold. But at the end of the day, not saying you should try to, go after that type of spirit. But the point is, look at the spirit that they've been put in, these leaders, certain officers of camps, captains, etc., and look how they move. And you should try to do that as well. Not in, once again, a negative spirit, but also understand like this is the type of discipline these men, exuberate over time, over years. And it comes with a lot of sacrifice, a lot of practice, a lot of training, right? Because that's the point of a camp. It's supposed to mold you into, how you're supposed to be, right? The true gifts that Yahweh Shemel Shai has instituted above you, right? Because when you're a part of a church, this is the type of spirit that for the most part, most bodies move in, right? Every spirit has its own body. We're going to go into that, right? But this is how we essentially move in through the spirit. So it's the book of Acts, chapter 8, or like 4, in verse 32. It says, and a multitude of them that believe were of one heart. That's how we are within this body, especially in WFI. We try to be a one heart, one mind, one soul, one understanding for the most part. And if we have, any type of disagreements or questions, we try to reconcile one another. We try to come together with, love and get a better understanding, And it says of one soul. Neither said any of them or of the things which he possessed with his own, but they had all things in common. Because the church take care of one another, right? Whether it be carnally, a brother may need, a coat, a brother may need some shoes, some boots, same as a sister as well, and they may need some, alms, right? Financially, to get them to where they need to go, to take care of certain things they need to do, maybe certain responsibilities within the household, kind of catching hell. But you know what? That's why you have the church. That's why you have the body. That's why you have the nest, right? So people can take care of you, as well as spiritually when you're down as well. Because guess what? You're going to have those spiritual moments when you're down through the spirit. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to look to. You may have a whole bunch of knowledge of precepts, but as you know who's going to watch this video, you're going to have those moments where it's like you need someone around you. You need to talk to somebody, that counselor of 1,000, right? As a matter of fact, I want to grab that real quick before I go into what I want to go into, right? That counselor of 1,000 extremely important within this truth. Sirach, the 6th chapter. It's the book of Sirach, chapter 6. And there you go. I was like, I know I'm reading over it. It's the book of Sirach, chapter 6 and verse 6. It says, be in peace with many, nevertheless, have but one counselor of 1,000. So you got to have someone you can go to talk about, certain things within your life, to go over certain things, as well as the scriptures as well. Most High willing, that's a person of understanding as well as discipline. Because you don't want to have a counselor of 1,000, but that person, they kind of just, they kind of just waxing worse. They kind of just being double-minded. One foot in the world, one foot out, right? You don't want to have that individual, in your life. Not saying that they can't be a good person, a good friend, that can't change or can't. But for the most part, this individual got to be on their P's and Q's. They have to walk in the same spirit as you. Otherwise, that person is not going to be able to help you in the long in the long term and grand scheme of things, right? And that's the point of why I wanted to grab these precepts. So showing that the Hebrew Israelite camp is first, a nation in regards to the 12 tribes, as well as an army of the Lord on a deeper level, as well as a church, a congregation, right? And the type of spirit that we move in when we're all together, right? Whether it be on the feast days, when we go to camp, or amongst ourselves, showing brotherly love. Certain brothers that go to different outings and have different preferences of what they want to do. That's how you build a nation. That's how you come together in the last days, because nothing else in this world is going to be able to save you. On the deepest, on another level, not to digress too much, it's a different video, but all hell is breaking loose on the earth right now. A lot of our people, especially those of the 2/3, God forbid, we're a part of that, but those people have no answers to what's going on. They don't want to change. They don't want to repent. They don't want to kind of just put off the flesh. Because just me speaking as a man for a quick sec, there's people at my job, I myself and others, I got a brother that worked with me that have told, certain jakes at that job who they are according to the Bible. Showed them little videos, broke certain things down through the scriptures, but it's kind of hard to just overcome that flesh. That's why they need to be with a camp. Now I'm gonna make a disclaimer real quick before I go any further. Just because you're a part of a camp does not mean you got an automatic ticket to the kingdom of heaven. And just because you're not a part of the camp, that doesn't mean you're 100% wicked or you're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. I got to make sure I put that as a disclaimer, because I know that certain Jake or E may be simple, God forbid, and say, well, okay, I just got to join a camp. Okay. I mean, because you got to think, I myself, especially when I first came into this truth, as well as certain other people, they may not have a camp in their vicinity, in their region, in their city, wherever they're located at across the four corners of the earth, right? There's not 100 camps in every single state in the right location, and it's very concise and where you need to be at. No, right? So because there's going to be those that have probably never been a part of the camp, but they may be of the elect, right? Most high willing. But nevertheless, I'm going to grab the reason why I also say we're a rehabilitation center in regards to a camp and why you should join that. But first, I want to make this quick point. I said, what is an animal's nest? And the reason why I said that essentially a camp is a spiritual nest, and I wanted to make this correlation, is because when you look at a nest, it says what? An animal nest is a structure built by various animals to house their eggs. House their eggs or young. While birds are the most well known for their elaborate nests, many other species, including mammals and invertebrates, also construct nests. So you have certain men, as well as even the women, that set up certain things for their respective offices and works within the body, right, to strengthen what? Each other. And as well as the newborns as are coming in, right, the babes, and strengthen those that already been in, that we may continue to what? Grow, right? The same thing the animals do. Job and many other men of the Lord has spoken of these things. I'm going to grab that precept after this. It says Nesbit can be made from organic materials like twigs and leaves, or even human-made materials, and serve to protect offspring and art. Like I can tell you in Acts the 17th chapter, what are offspring of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua on the deepest level. It tell you that we are the most highest people in Exodus the 3rd chapter, the 10th verse, from predators. Now it says what? Protect offspring from predators. I don't know why they keep popping up. Right? Offspring, and that's not just physically, but also spiritually as well. Because we also need each other to fight things spiritually. Different, lusts that we deal with, different emotions that we deal with, whether it be anger, anxiety, depression, pride. We have to protect each other from these predators that are trying to infiltrate, not just our flesh, but as well as the whole body as a whole, right? The whole camp as a whole. And environmental factors. The complexity and design of nests can vary significantly among different species, reflecting their unique behaviors and adaptations. Because you have, certain individuals are part of the bodies, they have different behaviors. They have, a different type of spirit on them, to kind of make everything whole, to kind of make everything come together within the body. A certain brother may have that spirit, or a certain sister may have that spirit, where they kind of, pull everybody together. And the Most High said to watch the animals and learn from them as well. Let's grab that real quick in the book of Job, the 12th chapter. Right, that's why you need this in the last days. It's the book of Job, chapter 12, in verse 7. It says, "But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the airs, and they shall tell thee." So just how animals move in the world, there are a lot of wisdom, knowledge, understanding that we can gather from these entities. Just depending on what you're talking about in context, and do what apply the same thing to our lives. So that's the reason why I wanted to point out this nest, because a nest is supposed to be a protection. It's supposed to be a housing ground, right? For the young, for the elder, right? And guess what? We have to protect each other in the last days. We have to nurture each other in the last days and look out for one another, right? And then grow together as well. Because at the end of the day, you got those individuals in regards to certain people on comment boards, well, or certain individualites, or even people that's just scoffers and mockers. They kind of look at us and they talk about the camps, they talk about the breakdowns, they talk about the gatherings, they talk about the beliefs, etc. Even certain Israelites that scoff at camps, but you wouldn't have never known about a camp or that you were a Hebrew Israelite without the men of the Lord on the highways and byways, right? So I want to grab a few precepts in regards to, I'm out on time, in regards to, what's it called? A camp being a rehabilitation center, right? Because we have to wash and clean and purge the spirits up off us. As a matter of fact, I'm going to grab that in a few. But first, I actually want to go into, I'm going to bring this out nonetheless. Ecclesiastes. It's the book of Sirach, chapter 38. I'm going to start at verse 2. It says, "For of the Most High cometh healing, and he shall receive honor of the king." Right? And the reason why I brought that out is because, for the most part, to be a part of a camp is to be healed. Why? Because you have brothers, sisters that can come together in different forms of fashions that can go over certain scriptures, and we can heal each other, right? With the understanding thereof. This person is dealing with a lust demon. This person is dealing with an anger demon. This person is dealing with a depression demon. This person is dealing with, a contention demon, right? A strife, debate, etc. Right? These are the different types of healings that we have to be healed from through the Spirit, right? And of also that's spiritually, but also physically as well. I myself, as well as certain other brothers I know, we have certain talks about what herbs to use, right? What herbs to use, and what I want to say what remedy to use in particular situations and why, right? Build yourself an apothecary, right? Because at the end of the day, all in nature and herbs are extremely powerful compared to Esau's, prescriptions and chemical drugs that people induce each and every day. Now, of course, another disclaimer: I'm not gonna say you don't buy Tylenol, don't buy anything from the pharmacy. I'm not saying that, but nevertheless, it's of the Most High that comes healing. A lot of things that our forefathers used was natural, right? When you go through various precepts and accounts, right? Like the mandrakes in the book of Genesis, with Rebecca Salaki, right? And it was one more specific account concerning oils. Even when you think about the priests, when you think about the frankincense, the myrrhs, they have a lot of healing properties as well to the skin, to your hair, depending on how you use it, right? And of course, they have a beautiful smell as well, right? The Most High is always dealing with the oils and the different smells as well. So, but the point is not to digress too much. For other Most High cometh healing, and he should receive honor of the King, right? Because when you join a part of a camp, you get that healing, you get that comfort you never really had in the world. You finally know what true love is. You finally know what it means to have a brother, what it means to be a friend, what it means to be a father, right? What it means to even be a mother or a sister, right? For the women, right? I'm gonna grab this precept. It's the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 16. I'm gonna grab this classic, right? It's the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 16 and verse 12. But it was neither herb nor mollifying plaster that restored them to health, but thy word, O Lord, that which healeth all things. So it's the word of the Lord that's going to heal us essentially. It's not weed, it's not crack, it's not coke, it's not any type of drug, no psychedelic, right? It's not anything on the earth that's going to heal us and take the scales off our eyes, right? Except for the word of the Lord. That's what it means to be a part of a Hebrew Israelite camp and be a part of a brotherhood, a sisterhood in the last days, right? Because essentially that's what the Most High said was going to happen, want to grab this, the book of Second Ezra, right? Because of course it's prophecy at the end of the day. That's why a lot of people are kind of confounded. What's spectacle? Like I tell you in First Corinthians, the 4th chapter. What's the book of Second Ezra, chapter 1? I'm gonna start at verse 35. It says, your houses will I give to a people that shall come, which not having heard of me, yet shall believe me, to whom I have showed no signs, yet they shall do that I have commanded them. This is a prophecy that's coming to pass right now, and has came to pass for the last, it's really on the highest of levels since, I would probably say the elders in One West in 1969. But of course, you have different accounts even before then. But nevertheless, this is amping up because why? Prophecy is amping up. The last days are waxing worse and worse. We're seeing more come to pass. But the point is, guess what? We're of those people that, guess what? We've never really seen the Ark of the Covenant. We've never seen, the Red Sea being split. We've never seen fire get called down from heaven. We've never seen a lot of things. We've never seen Yahweh Shai in the flesh. But we believe the things that Yahweh Shai has told us, right, through the Spirit, right? Verse 36, it says, they have seen no prophets, yet they shall call the sins to remembrance and acknowledge them. That's essentially what we're doing in the last days, and a lot of people a lot of people on the outside, as well as our people, are being confounded by that. Like how you're just black. These are just black guys. Well, they're just out there. They're so angry. They're so frustrated. These guys, they don't have no women. They don't have no jobs. They definitely don't have any money. This is pretty much the type of mindset a lot of people have from the outside looking in. They're kind of, confounded at the gatherings, how we move, how we are together. They just they don't know what's going on. But verse 37, it says, I take the witness the grace of the people to come, whose little ones rejoice in gladness. And we're rejoicing in gladness through the Spirit, right? Because we don't do the things, and the Most High has brought us out of darkness, the chains of darkness, essentially. Now, of course, we still go through, different vices. That's the condition of the battle, right? A heavy yoke is upon the sons of Adam from the day that they be born to the day they return to the mother of all things. Sirach 40:1. So, of course, we're going to go through things. And we're going to experience things concerning this truth, right? Just like Yahweh Shai warned us about the different types of, Israelites, when you read Mark the 4th chapter, Matthew the 13th chapter, and what they have to overcome and endure. And it says, and though they have not seen me with bodily eyes, yet in spirit they shall believe the things that I say. That's why a lot of people are really confounded, essentially. What do you mean the Hebrew Israelites is something that came up in 1969, One West, or in the 1800s, where this type of person, because they don't understand the spiritual aspect. They're judging us by the carnal eyes of what they kind of see right from the outside, and that's it. They don't really understand the spiritual concepts of the Bible, right? They don't really understand the secrets, because it's not given unto them, right? The secret things from the Most High are made known unto us. That's Deuteronomy 29:29, right? So let's grab, the purpose of why I want to continue, or why you should join the Hebrew Israelite camp. Because you have, whether you're a man, woman, especially if you're a man, the type of onus and responsibility you have within this truth is huge, right? It doesn't matter what level you're on. You play a part within the building of this construct in some type of which way and role, right? And the Most High knew this. That's why you're here in the flesh today, to fulfill that on the earth. This is Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse 5. It says, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So you're supposed to be built up. Now, every brother is not going to be on a particular level. Every brother is not going to be super sharp like the leader of the camp and know all the accounts at the drop of a dime, so on and so forth. But nevertheless, it says, and before thou camest out of the womb, I sanctified thee, meaning he's chosen you, he's cleansed you, right, and set you apart and ordained thee to be a prophet unto the nations. So you're going to know some type of information. You're going to be built up in such a way that you're going to have to be a light unto the world, right? Because it's prophesied for you to be that. It's prophesied for you to go on the highways and byways and establish the nation of Israel in the last days, right? It's prophesied. It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 16, and it's like at 51 and verse number 16, right? It says, it's the Most High prophesying. It says, and I have put my words in thy mouth, right? That's why a lot of people are confounded by the Hebrew Israelites that try to want to debunk us, that have so-called, crafty counsels How can we confound these guys? Learn all they're just they're just you got precept books, precept pamphlet, just kind of memorizing. But at the end of the day, they don't understand that the Most High has put the words within our mouth. Why? Because if any man speak, let him speak in the oracles of God. And most times we don't use our own words for that purpose, right? It says, I have put my words in thy mouth, and I have covered thee in the shadow of my hand, meaning with the Most High Spirit, that I may plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth, and say unto Zion, thou art my people, right? Because at the end of the day, how is our people going to arise out of the dust? How are our people is going to know who they are, what they're supposed to be doing, which way they should walk in, right? What they should believe in. Christianity is not going to tell you. All of the passages in Christianity is finished, cooked, done. They don't really understand nothing concerning the Bible. They don't understand nothing concerning prophecy. They're still trying to figure out, so-called spiritual Israel. All nations can be saved. The same, wicked, false doctrines that's just roaming the earth, but really has no answers, really has amounted to nothing, right? Because the Most High is not dealing with that, right? This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 30 and verse number 20, because the Most High also said what? This was going to come to pass in the last days, right? And this is why you should join the camp. This is why you should be a part with brothers and different sisters, because this is how you're going to grow, right? You're stronger together. You're not stronger being by yourself, right? This walk is a hard walk. It's extremely difficult, right? You're going to need people around you. Nobody can do it by themselves. It doesn't matter what level that you're on, right? It's the book of Isaiah 30 and 20. And though the Lord give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner anymore, but thy eyes shall see thy teachers. I can tell you one thing, just me speaking for myself as a man for a second. I didn't really know what discipline was until I was around brothers, right? I didn't know what discipline was until I looked at, men of renown, so to speak, within this truth, right? That I kind of uphold them to. Of course, they're still men in the flesh. I mean, I worship them, if you got ears to hear. But nevertheless, I look at these men and look at their works, look at what they had to endure, look at what they had to overcome. And it was me being a part of, a camp that structured me and helped me and building me into that, right? And they're still continually doing it through the spirit of Yahweh Shem Shah, through the grace and mercy of Yahweh Shem Shah, right? Because these men and individuals got a lot on their plate, right? It says, and I hear shall a word behind thee saying, this is the way, walk ye in it, when you turn to the right hand and when you turn to the left. So, like we went over a few things already, a camp is an army. It's the nation of Israel. It's a church, a congregation, as well as a healing center as well, right? All of these things, the multiplicity of aspects kind of make up who we are, which is the nation of Israel, right? Because essentially in the world, this is how we're looked at. Let's grab this precept real quick, right? We're not looked at, it's cool in the world. We're not looked at as, I want to go hang with this guy. A lot of your so-called worldly friends, families, they look at you different. They kind of, they keep it cordial if they do, all praise to the Most High. But for the most part, a lot of people don't want nothing to deal with you, especially if you're trying to move a certain way through the spirit. Now, if you kind of being double-minded, in one foot in, one foot out, of course you're going to be a lot more cooler, calm, collective, etc. It says, Psalm 69 and verse 8, I become a stranger unto my brethren and an alien unto my mother's children. And that's what's going to happen when you're, when you come into this truth, when you're a part of the camp, because essentially what? You're going to be weird to everybody else. You're going to be weird to how you move, the way that you talk, the way that you walk, the way that you pretty much converse, your whole demeanor, your character. You're going to become strange. Why? Because you're not really giving yourself over to the flesh anymore, right? You're not just giving yourself over to who you once were, what you once used to do, the crew that you used to hang with, the type of habits and vices you used to be into, right? Because when you come into this truth, you got to do what? Right? This is the importance. This is essentially prophecy. That's why it's important to be a part of a camp. So like I said, Zephaniah 1, right? Because the Most High told us this. Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse 1, it says, yea, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. Right? When you think of the so-called black man, Hispanic man, Native American man, woman, and child, guess what? Nobody has desired this. Nobody has had, a help in our, on us excelling, on us coming from up from the bottom, and us coming from, a destitute estate, on building us up in any way, right? Because every single nation has cursed us. I had their hand in regards to destroying us, like it tells you in the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2 and verse 10. Right? There's no nation that has blessed us in any capacity, right? So that's why we have to gather together. It says before the decree come bring forth, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you. And that fierce anger of the Lord is right around the corner. That's why you need to be around brothers and sisters through the mercy of Yahweh Yahushua while you still can, right? And don't take it for granted, right? Because we're living in precious times. To be able to have another feast day, that's precious. To be able to have another Sabbath, that's precious. To be able to have, someone you can call on your phone, chop it up, go into certain, breakdowns, scriptural understanding, or just checking on that individual, that brother, that sister, whomever. That's mercy from the Lord. So that's why being a part of a Hebrew Israelite camp is so beneficial, so sufficient for you in these last days. Now, a lot of people are gonna look at it. Nah, I don't want to deal with that. Nah, I don't know. I don't really like what he's saying. I'm not gonna take that serious. I mean, is it really that important? I've gotten this far on my own. I mean, look at the Lord has built me up in a way where I haven't been around anybody, so why would I need to? Hey, well, the Lord gonna get up with you, whenever that time is. Does that mean that you're evil and wicked? No, but you are supposed to gather together if you can, right? The Sabbath, the feast days, those are convocations. But if you can convocate and yet still not doing it, that's something you got to examine within yourself, right? It says before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you, right? Because the Most High, he's gonna come upon Israel first, through the precepts and prophecy, right? Like I tell you in Zephaniah 1, he's touching the nation of Israel with candles, right? It tell you in First Peter 4 and 17 that judgment may first begin at the house of God, right? And that's talking about who? Israel. So we need to gather together more frequently while the mercy of Yahweh Shem Yahushua is still upon us in these last days, right? Because essentially that's going to strengthen us. Let me grab this real quick. Ecclesiastes 4. Right, Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 9, it says two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. Right, and two are better than one. Right, two are better than one on a multitude of levels. It says because nobody can do it by themselves. Moses, he had Aaron and Hur. Yahushua, he had James, like John, he had Peter. And really had James, John, and Peter, at certain moments as well. Right, and Yahushua, he had the spirit without measure, but he always still had righteous men around him. That's something that we always, got to kind of keep in our minds. No matter how mighty you are, no matter how much you still need people within your circle, within your life to strengthen you, to be around you, and to help you, right? Because being in this, corruptible flesh, you're going to be weak, right? That's just playing upon tables. You say I'm not going to be weak. Hey, man, that means you better than Yahushua, right? And God forbid a person is walking the earth that got that mindset, right? That's really off, right? Because Paul, he had Titus and Timothy, and at one point he had Barnabas. So at the end of the day, you have righteous men within the scriptures who always have men around them, right? So two are always going to be better than one. It says, for if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe unto him that is alone. For when he falleth, he have not another to help him up. Yeah, because you can't do it by yourself. That's why you join a camp. That's why you be around, a congregation or a church, because you need that help, whether physically or spiritually, right? Because if you truly forsake the world, guess what? You coming into this truth and having brothers, if you're a brother or sisters, if you're a sister to help you, that's the mercy that the Most High is giving you, right? Because guess what? Yahushua did say in Luke the 16th chapter that you can have friends of mammon, depending on, who that is and how you go about that. But for the most part, you have to have righteous people within your lives. Because a lot of your friends are going to forsake you. A lot of your family is going to forsake you, right? Like we went over earlier, right? But at the end of the day, when you have people in this truth to help you, guess what? That's mercy from the Lord. That's mercy when you can call somebody, hey, you know what? I need $20. I need help, some gas money. I need something to eat, right? As long as that person is moving in a sincere, righteous spirit, guess what? Hey, brother, I got you. I'm going to help you out with that, right? Because you can, who else you going to go to? That's why you need to be around the body. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? Right? And that's also spiritually as well, because I can't be on fire by myself. I mean, I could, but who's gonna help me be on fire? I'm just doing everything by myself to be on fire. I read 10 to 20 chapters. I watched this breakdown. I mean, I throw up prayers. I'm just on fire by myself. No, sometimes to ignite that fire, to help that fire kindle more and more, you're gonna need people around you, individuals to stir up that fire. There's times where I call brothers, or I'm on the phone with a brother, multiple brothers, and we start talking about accounts. We start talking about precepts, and they kindle that fire, because the word is a fire ultimately on a spiritual level. That's Jeremiah chapter 5 and verse 14, Jeremiah 23 and verse 29. So you need someone around you to do what? Kindle that fire. And then what? Then you're gonna have that heat. You're gonna have that heat through the spirit, because guess what? You're with a brother, you're with a sister to help you, to go over these things with you, to strengthen you, to exhort you, to refresh your spirit. But it says what? But how can one be warm alone? Yeah, because you can't do it by yourself. Who you think you is? Right? Who do you think you are? Right? None of us is on the level of how shy. And he still needed people around him to strengthen him, right? To be with him, to comfort him, right? He still had friends. Why can't we move like that? Right? Or we too good, we too proud. And we different. Right? That's what most people say nowadays. Right? And it says verse 12, and if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and the 3/4 code is not quickly broken. So that's why you have to be with your people, essentially. Right? You gotta be with your people, because you need certain men. Hey, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's certain brothers, even if I haven't told them, I looked at them and I'm like, you know what? I like how they deal with this, and I deal with that same thing, but they're overcoming that. They're already an example in my eyes, just by the spirit that they move in, even though I haven't told them, right? Because guess what? Who are you gonna look to as an example? Who are you gonna look to as a mentor? Who are you gonna look to as a counselor? You have to be with someone within a body, right? Of course, once again, it's a disclaimer. This video is not for, go to IUIC, or go to ISUBK, or go to GMS, or SOT. This video is not for that. But the point is that you join a body to help yourself spiritually, because you cannot do it alone. And if you can do it alone, if you think you can do it alone, well, your mind is bad, it's off, and you're moving in pride, right? So let me grab this precept in the book of 2 Corinthians, because essentially, now that you're with a body, this is what you're doing. You're putting off the old man. You're putting off the old women, right? This is book of 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 17. It says, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. So how are you going to become this new creature that Yahweh Shem Yahushai has instructed you in, has put the spirit of the Most High within you to become this entity, yet you just by yourself, you're not with a body. You have to be with the righteous, right? Or those that striving to be righteous and striving to be perfect, because this world is full of darkness. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, like it tells us in Ephesians 6 chapter, right? So we have to be around the right individuals. Doesn't it say this about Saul? Let me grab this real quick precept. First Samuel, what's that? 10. Book of 1 Samuel 10 and verse 6. It says, and the spirit of the Lord will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and thou shalt be turned into another man. So when you come into this truth, you got to become another man, another creature, another person that you once were. You can't be the same. You can't be the same, Tyrone. You can't be the same Meech. You can't be the same, God, whatever name that you used to be within the world, right? You have to be around men that are going to tell you, what? I was able to put the weed down because, first of all, the Most High, the precept showed me, but I saw how this brother, he said he dealt with it. That strengthened me, that exhorted me. I was able to overcome because of his example, or her example. I was able to stop, freaking off and lust, because I seen this brother deal with lust, and I was like, damn, he he fighting it, but I mean, look how strict his discipline is, his regimen is, right? His faith and fervency is in the Lord to overcome that spirit, right? So you have to become this person yourself, right? And of course, Yahweh told us this as well. It's not a new concept. I mean, of course, when you come into this truth, we understand we have to become this. But Yahweh said what as well? It's the book of Matthew 18 and verse 3. It says, and I said, verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, you should not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Something that Araya always says on his videos, and something that he even told me a long time ago. He's always in student mode, right? And that's a beautiful proverb essentially. And world, I ain't gonna say worldly, that's kind of sound kind of off, but I would say, as man's wisdom, right? Like I tell you in Sirach, those that became wise poured forth exquisite parables, right? I'm gonna put it like that, right? But that was a good thing that he always says, and that he told me a long time ago, because to be in this truth, some of us, we hear the prophecies, we hear certain breakdowns, we hear certain understandings, and it's kind of like, whoa, that's it, just gotta endure. But it's like, no, there's always more to learn. There's always more to correct. There's always more areas to strengthen, and of course, always more work to do, right? I tell you that the watchmen, and I want to grab the precept in Isaiah 62, but the watchmen should not hold their peace, right, until Zion come. Essentially, greatly paraphrased, Isaiah 62, 5 and verse 6. There's always more to do. So to be a little child, you as a little little kids always getting into trouble. I got a nephew. Guess what? He's always getting into something, right? He's a kid. He's 2 years old. You got to tell him, hey, you can't do that, or hey, watch out, it's gonna hurt you. Watch out, you about to you about to fall. Right? That's not good, etc. So we have to be the same thing spiritually, right? And once again, it goes into being part of a body. Brothers and sisters help you a lot through the spirit, essentially, right? And sometimes, like I said at the beginning, Jake and Eve, we don't really like, correction. We don't really like listening. We feel like, well, I'm older than this person. I know more than this person. Why do I gotta listen to this individual? Who are they essentially? But you don't really know who you're dealing with through the spirit. So it's best to just kind of hold your tongue. Right? It's the book of Hebrews, chapter 13 and verse 17. Right? Because if most high willing, when you're watching this video, you decide to join the camp, or you're already a part of one, but you continue to learn, you continue to grow, you continue to excel through the spirit. This is one of the key components of what you have to do. It says, Hebrews 13 and 17, obey them that have rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give an account, that they must do it with joy and not with grief, for it is unprofitable unto you. So you have certain men that was set up that have to watch over your souls. They have to watch and protect the flock, and strengthen the flock, exhort the flock, and kind of gather the troops when the flock is kind of starting to go astray, starting to lose focus, starting to get tired of faint. We have to obey these individuals, men that the Most High has set up, because of course through the flesh, people kind of look at, well, he's the leader of the camp, he's a leader over that city, I gotta listen to him. Nah, not him. Remember that one thing I heard about him in the past? I don't really know if he's the guy. Like, the Lord set him up. He said he married. How? So these are the kind of the different conflations that people kind of come up with in their mind, but that's because they're thinking carnally instead of spiritually. Because essentially, the Most High set up everybody, and certain judgments that these men put forth. Guess what? They all come from the Lord. But a lot of people, they kind of look at it in the carnal mindset. The book of Proverbs, chapter 29 and verse 26, it says, many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment coming from the Lord. So every man that the Most High set up over a specific camp, over a specific city, regardless of his office, if he's put in, a high-ranking position, or even a position of authority, guess what? The Most High has made that position right through the Spirit. Right, whether you like that, understand it, believe it or not. Now, of course, even as the Most High has set up those individuals, the same way he can cast down those individuals, right? If they're not moving in a sincere spirit with integrity, because guess what? A greater condemnation is going to be upon those men, right? They have a heavier responsibility, right? That's James chapter 3 and verse 1. A lot of our people, and this is not really a new concept. I'm gonna grab an account real quick. Exodus chapter 17, right? The people in our people in the wilderness was moving in this type of spirit, right? I'm gonna read two verses. It's Exodus 17 and verse 1. It says, and all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of sin, and their journeys according to the commandment of Yahweh, and pinched in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink, right? Verse 2, wherefore the people did chide with Moses. So of course the people, the first thing people are doing, they chiding with the man in charge, right? The man that helped them, flee out of Egypt, help them cross the Red Sea, escape out of the Egyptians, etc. First thing they think of is Moses. It says, and give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? Because it's not of anything that Moses had done within his power to where he's done these things. Of course, yes, the Most High has placed power in his hands to execute certain stuff, to execute certain judgments, to execute certain actions, but everything ultimately on the deepest of levels goes back to the Most High, right? So that's why I say all that to say and bring this account out is when the scripture says in Hebrews the 13th chapter, obey them that have rule over you. You have to obey those that the Most High put in position of leadership and rulership. Why? Because they watch over your souls, and for the most part, they've been set up through the Spirit in a way that, you know what, you're not there yet. You have to be built up. They have the experience. They're qualified, right? They're eligible, right? And guess what? If you're not ever put in that position, there's don't worry about it, right? That doesn't mean that you can't strive for it. You're going off, right? Because not everybody is going to be, a so-called lieutenant, a general, or officer, right, or a captain, etc. Right? But at the end of the day, you do have to listen to these men, right? Because the Most High has set them up. And that's one thing Israel's always had a problem with is leadership, right? Israel's always had a problem with leadership through many accounts within the scriptures, right? But the next point I want to grab real quick, let me see where I'm on time, Con. Next point I want to grab when you join a camp, let me grab this real quick. 1 Corinthians. It's the understanding your gifts, right? Because there's many topics I want to kind of touch within the short time span, but and of course certain accounts I want to go into as well, but I don't want to be too long-winded. But understanding being a part of the camp and why you should join one is to understand your gifts and spirit. You may be an individual that the Most High set up. You're a great counselor. You give good counsel. You give good wisdom, right? You may be a greater exhortation, right? Mighty. You might be a brother, a sister with a lot of zeal, right? And you strengthen, others the same. You may be an individual where, as we're going to go into, you know a lot about healing. Of course, on a spiritual level with certain precepts, if that be your lot, and the Most High bestow that spirit upon you, as well as the different holistic remedies that you've learned through research, through knowledge, right, and that you may even apply yourself, right, etc., etc. We're gonna go into it. Right? This is one of the most important parts of joining the camp, understanding what your gift is. Because now I know that I'm a Hebrew Israelite. What do I do next? What do I put my hand to? What do I join? How do I get strengthened through the spirit? How do I know that this is my lot, my office? How do I know that I could attain to this particular level? Or these are the different ways and I would say think mindsets we should have concerning what's in our spirit, right? To excel. You don't want to be slothful, you don't want to wax worse, you don't want to kind of just be stagnant. You don't want to be, I know I'm a Hebrew Israelite, because there's people who know, I always say this, there's people who know that they're Hebrew Israelite, and they just understand the knowledge. A lot of our people in the highways of Bible, I know I'm a Jew, I'm a Hebrew Israelite, I'm chosen. And then you have people who know it, and then people who apply and do something about it, right? But it's 1 Corinthians 12 verse 4. Now there are different diversities of gifts, but the same spirit. So ultimately you have different camps, you have different messages from each camp, of course, as well. Of course, you have different doctrines. That's not the point of this video, but it's still the same spirit of gathering the people together, strengthening our people towards repentance, strengthening our people in the faith of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua and keeping the commandments. It says, and there are different set of administrations. So, you may have a camp that's mighty in prophecy, mighty in practical knowledge, but then you have another camp that's great in exhortation, right? That's great in and just wisdom overall, right? And great in healing, right? There are different administrations, meaning different, practices, essentially. If you want to label it as that, but it's the same spirit and of the same Lord, right? And there are different diversities of operation, but it is the same God which worketh in all. It says, but the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. So if you're in this truth, you understand who you are according to the Bible. Guess what? You have a spirit within you, a gift within you that you have to find out what that is and try to manifest it to the best of your God-given ability. Because the Lord is going to require that of you, right? Like even Yahweh said that within the parable. You don't want to be that person that kind of just dig the talent away, kind of put it under, and you did nothing with it, right? Because when it comes time to the judgment, Yahweh is going to require that we use it, right? 1 Corinthians 12:8. For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit. So now Paul is going into the different diversities of what the Spirit is, and how they work, right? And to another, faith. You may have a brother that has a lot of faith. When he read the scriptures, bro, he kind of exhilarate everybody around him. Everybody's just on fire now. Everybody's, they just ready. They just active. They just kindle a flame within, certain brothers through the Spirit. And at the end of the day, it's like that, right? That it got me out of whatever I was feeling at that moment. It got me out of whatever I dealt with for the day. It's just about the same Spirit, and to another, gifts of healing by the same Spirit. So of course that also talk about carnally or physically, like we just kind of went into, right? As to another the working of miracles, and to another prophecy, and to another the discerning of spirits, and to another diverse kinds of tongues. So you may have a brother that is good at prophecy, right? Great at prophecy. Of course, he knows other breakdowns and whatnot, but he's amazing how he's able to put the prophecies together. He could break down, Revelation 16, 13, the different beasts, Daniel 7, Daniel 11, the return of Yahushua, Revelation 19, etc. Right? It says to another prophecy, discerning the spirit. You may have a person that's great at discernment. They can see things before they happen. They can kind of put two and two together, right? They're great, in judgment, right? That's until another discerning the spirits, and to another diverse kinds of tongues. So you have an individual that's great at knowing other languages, that's proficient in it, and to another the interpretation of tongues, meaning understanding. But all these work of that one and the self same Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will. Right? That's the point. For as the body is one and have many members, and all members of that one body being many are one body, so also is Mashiach. So of course, as you go down, you can read the chapter for yourself. Every part of that body has a significant purpose. It's very consequential to how the Lord operates. Just because I'm not the toe or the finger or the arm, that doesn't mean that I'm not really important. No, all of it is important to the work and the building of this temple, right, of Yahweh Shem Shai, right? Because essentially, guess what? We're not gonna all be on the same page. Essentially, in regards to the, I'm talking about all the different Hebrew Israelite camps on the greatest levels, right? As a matter of fact, that's a prophecy, real quick, right? And we understand that through the Spirit. Ephesians, no, I said Ephesians, Isaiah 52, right? Because through the Spirit, every camp has a purpose. You may have brothers that reach elderly brothers, right? The older generation, maybe they want to be what that, because like I tell you in Sirach, the 13th chapter and 16th verse, all flesh cleaveth according to its liking. So you got different camps where you got elder men. You have camps where you have a mixture of both. You have camps where you have younger men. You have camps where you have a kind of small mixture of a lot of younger men, some older men, and then opposite of that as well. But nevertheless, we're all in one body in Yahweh Shem Yahushai with different gifts, different diversities of spirit, but always the same Lord, trying to build up this nation each and every day. So it says, "Thy watchmen shall lift up Isaiah 52:8, Salaki. Thy watchmen shall lift up thy voice." With the voice together shall they sing, for they shall see eye to eye when the Lord shall bring again Zion. So all, essentially when Yahweh shall returns and set, us back in order as the top ruling kingdom on the earth, then guess what? All the 12 tribes of Israel is going to be on one agreement, on one accord, right? Moving in the right spirit, the same spirit as well. It's not going to be about this doctrine. It's not going to be about, this understanding or only us have the truth, etc. No, all of that petty, tedious, insignificant, kind of banter is just gonna kind of get put to the side because the Lord's gonna set things in order, right? So right now we got to be moving in the spirit of loving each other and being the Lord's disciples in these last days and continue to do the work. Right? It's the book of John, chapter 13. And Yahweh Shah said that as well. Right? It's the book of John, chapter 13, and verse 34. A new commandment I give unto you. Now, obviously, we know this is not a new commandment. When you go into this word, new commandment, I'm going to bring this up. Well, we could do it real quick. Right? Commandment. There you go. Press the wrong thing. Salakia Israel. New commandment. Is it that one? I think it is that one. When it says new commandments, just talk about refresh. I think I'm. Yes, it was that Salakia. A new commandment I gave unto you. So it says what? New, as respect from recently made fresh, recent, unused, unworn. So that's the kind of, it's kind of, I don't know why, that's kind of folly. It says recently made fresh, recent. These are the type of understandings that, Yahweh Shah is talking to, right? In regards to refreshing that. Because, of course, when you go into the law, yes, that commandment is, to love your neighbor. So that for those who have for those this may be new to the understanding, you never heard that before, but nevertheless it says a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. So that's how we grow more as a body. That's how we grow more as a nation, by continuing to love each other in these last days. Now Yahweh Shai also did say that the love of many will wax cold. So there's a balance to that as well. You got to understand that, because as times get worse, people are, the Most High is going to test the earth. It's going to test us too. But while we still have the mercy and grace of Yahweh Shem Shah, and we still have each other, guess what? We're commanded to love one another. It says, "By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one toward another." Right? And that's a beautiful thing when you're able. Because I'm, just me speaking for myself. You know, um, I didn't really know how to, love my brother until I, joined the body, right? Or I'll put it like this: I wouldn't say I didn't know how to love. I knew how to love my brother more, right, and perfect that love. I would like to word it as that, because I kind of sound crazy. I didn't know how to love my brother. Because I had love for my so-called homies in the world and a lot of other individuals, right? That was in vanity. How much more in this truth? So I was able to understand what that love really meant, especially concerning the precepts, the scriptures, and even on the carnal level as well, because you're not, it's Jake in this world. You're so used to being tough. You're so used to being a made man. You're so used to doing a lot on your own. You're so used to just, you know, uh, that's my guy, but you never really tell him you love him. I love you, brother. All right, that's it's even to myself. It's brothers that know me know how much I've grown out of that. Because it's been a journey, it's been a task, but it was through the example of men that I was able to grow into that, to who I am now, to who I am today. And of course, it still takes work. It's still progress each and every day, right? Because there are those who kind of like separate themselves. They kind of, I don't know about that. What do you mean? Because I had a person somebody in my life, that's close to me. You kind of watch the videos, he'd be scoffing. He said, you just be standing there, you kind of had him, somebody arm on your shoulder, you teaching or you reading, like, you get up off me. Somebody has said that to me, but it's like, they in the world, they don't really know what's going on. He of course is the elder individual, but nevertheless, yeah, I mean, he doesn't really know the true love of Yahweh Shemashah. He doesn't really know love in regards to loving his people. They don't really know that this revolution that we're a part of will not necessarily be televised, right? You're not really gonna hear the Hebrew Israelite awakening. Oh yeah, these guys are gonna be outside 3 p.m., 4 p.m. in your respective cities. You're not gonna hear that at on the news. Not gonna get an Amber Alert. Not gonna get none of that. So at the end of the day, what helped me was being around brothers, right? To strengthen me in that spirit, to come out of my so-called shell and to be formed into the full stature of Yahweh Shai. Like it tells you in the book of Ephesians, chapter 4 and verse 13, right? But people who move in that emotional spirit, I don't want to be a part of a camp. I don't want to be a part of a body. I'm good on my own, or I'm going to do my own thing. This is what this is what Jude essentially exemplified these individuals as. So this is Jude chapter 1 and verse 19. It says, "These be they who separate themselves sensual, not having the spirit." I want to go into this word sensual real quick, right? It's like this word sensual. Uh, I mean that last definition, the sensuous nature with its objection and to appetite and passion. I mean that's a decent definition, but the word sensual within itself, sensual action. There we go. It says deficient. the word deficient. Oh my goodness. So it's going into lacking some necessary quality or element into what? It says sensual, not having the spirit. So, they're lacking in moral, spiritual, or intellectual interests, worldly. And then it says especially irreligious. I thought it said egregious. It says relating to or consisting in the gratification of the senses or indulgence of the appetite, meaning your flesh, essentially. So essentially, you want to do your own thing. That's essentially what it's saying in layman's terms. It's kind of being a little articulate and eloquent with its definitions, but that's essentially all it's really saying. You sensual, meaning you want to do whatever you want to do, believe in what you want to believe, move how you want to move. These are those who kind of separate from the body. Y'all don't really have the understanding. I don't believe y'all have the spirit of the Most High. These are people who move in that spirit. Not, they just they're so called against camps or before other avenues you know um to take, I would say, through the spirit, essentially, right? But essentially a lot of these individuals, not saying all, not saying the majority, but a lot of them, for the most part, they just what's the word I'm looking for? They don't really have no solutions. That's the best way to put it. They don't really have any solutions, right? And it's something Yahweh Shai broached on. I'm getting close to wrapping this up. Grabbing a couple more precepts. So it's the book of Mark, chapter 4. I'm gonna start at verse. This whole thing is crazy. I'm gonna start at verse. I'm gonna start at verse 17. Just go to the point. So Mark chapter 4 and verse 17, because these who are spiritual, they said, what do Yahweh said? He said, Mark chapter 4 and verse 17, it says, what? These are that it's like and have no root in themselves, and so endure for a time. So it's only a certain time they come into this truth. Now there's the scripture doesn't dictate the duration of how long that time is, whether it be a year, 3 years, 10 years, 7 years. There's no exact time limit or answer for that. But nevertheless, for a time afterward, when affliction or persecution arises, a persecution can be what? It could be a wife, it could be a husband, it could be a family, it could be a friends, it could be a job, it could be your finances, it could be a health, or it could just be public opinion. I don't know if I could be out there. I don't know if I want to. You guys are outside. All of that yelling. I don't really like that. You kind of mean the way that you talk to, and not to digress, but brothers have cleaned up a lot of their communication and how Hebrew Israelites used to be. Right, a lot of things have gotten better now. Right, it's a lot more sincere edification going on in the last days. So it's making less and less excuses from those on the outside looking in, and those who already know already that what you kind of you can't say that anymore, right? But it says when persecution arises, the public opinion, it says for the word's sake, immediately they are offended, right? So these are going to be what? They're going to be choked out, essentially. That's the type, because they had no root, right? They wasn't rooted in Yahweh Shem Shai. They wasn't rooted in this doctrine. They wasn't rooted in faith. They didn't really truly believe, essentially, right? So then they're going to get cast away, meaning back into the world, back into whatever they used to be into, or whatever, whatever life they used to lead, except essentially, right? And I mean, they're not really watching the times. They're not paying attention. That's why being a part of a body is so important, because you have to constantly watch the times. You have to constantly watch prophecy. You have to constantly understand and watch what's going on and why. And people are going to be able to strengthen you in that, right? Because you want to be girded up as much as you can in the last days. I'm gonna grab my closing precepts, right? You want to be girded up as much as you can in the last days. Was much the more you know, the more that you're built up, in faith spiritually, the more fear you have, but Yahweh Shem Shai, guess what? That's gonna be strengthening you in the times to come, because you're gonna be on the move, right? And being around a body, being around a congregation is just, it's so important and so essential to that growth, right? Otherwise, you're not gonna grow into whatever the Most High is meant for you, right? Ultimately, because you have gifts, you have talents, but you never utilize them. You can't utilize them because you're moving on your own understanding, right? You're doing what you want to do, or you're being rebellious, right? Essentially, that's off, right? This book of First Peter, chapter 4 and verse 7. It says, "But the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be therefore sober and watch unto prayer." So the end of all things is at hand, right? We're literally living where all hell is breaking loose. As this video is taking place, you have all hell breaking loose in Minnesota. Different diverse laws being passed constantly for ICE, passed for the government, and other. It's not even rumors of wars anymore. If people saying there's rumors of wars, they, God forbid, they don't know what's going on, because it's actually war taking place on the earth. NATO is kind of divided against one another. The so-called United States, America, divided against one another. You have different wars. Iran is looking to get taken over by Israel and the U.S. So many things is popping off right now. So guess what? The end of all things is at hand. So you can't afford to be drunk within this world, drunk with specific doctrines, God forbid, drunk with, God knows what lifestyle, or even your own vices that you deal with. You caught up in your own sins and it's weighing you down. The end of all things is at hand. You got to kind of put that off, right? Don't let them weigh you down. If you got time to repent, do so, right? Because at the end of the day, you need as much faith as you can coming into Jacob's trouble, right? And it says, "And watch unto prayer." So you constantly got to be praying. Paul said in the book of First Thessalonians, what's that, the 5th chapter? I want to say the 19th verse. If I'm missing it, brother can correct me in the comments. It says, "Pray without ceasing." So you got to constantly be in prayer, constantly having the Lord on your mind, constantly always thinking about, the spiritual accounts of our forefathers, right? The spiritual accounts of how to examine yourself, right? How to do better, how to repent, right? Because essentially, we have in the last days, right? Nobody else is coming to aid us. No other nation is coming to aid us. People in the world is not coming to aid you, to help you. You only have Yahweh Shem Yahushua, His truth, and your people, right? So we have to gather together and understand this. So it's the book of Luke, chapter 19, and start at verse 12. "And he said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive himself a kingdom and to return. And he called his 10 servants, and the servants is going to Israel, right? And delivered them 10 pounds, meaning a certain, amount of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding and gifts through the Spirit. And he said unto them, occupy till I come," right? Occupy till I come. So you have to be occupied within this truth, occupied within the scripture, occupied within your body, right? Because it tell you what in Sirach 39 chapter in verse 1 on down. It tell you the more that you're occupied, you're going to be blessed in the meditations thereof, prophecies, parables, etc. Right? You want to be occupied as much as you can through the Spirit, that you may be, girded about spiritually for the times to come. And that's what helps with, joining the body, joining the Hebrew Israelite camp, and being around brothers and sisters to help elevate you to that level that you may grow thereby. Because nobody can, do it alone. But with that, I'm going to give all honor and glory to how about Shema Shagum like Yahushai. Most High willing, this has been edifying. This is the reason and importance of joining the Hebrew Israelite camp, and the different variations of aspects of why, you brothers and sisters should join the body and take this truth more seriously through the mercy and grace of Yahweh Shem Shai while you can, right? Because there's not much time left. But with that, Kwam Yashala, Shalom.